Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Yaldania, and I'm the president of the Iranian American Bar Association's Washington, D.C. chapter. It is a pleasure for us to be joined by several leading immigration practitioners in the space for a very timely webinar on the impacts of deportations on Iranians today, given recent events unfolding both domestically and, of course, internationally in Iran. So we are grateful to our speakers today. And in a moment, I will turn it over to IABA DC board member Shireen Afsus. But before I do, I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk a little bit about IABA and IABA DC. IABA is a nonprofit, non-religious, apolitical organization with a threefold mission. The first is to educate our community. Second is to protect and advance the legal rights of Iranian Americans and other communities of another minority communities. And the third is to promote and foster the achievements of Iranian American legal professionals. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Shireen Afsus. Shireen?
Thank you, Yavnejun. Good afternoon, everybody. We are so excited for this panel and this very timely discussion. We are joined by some true heavyweight champions in the legal community, and we're so excited to have the opportunity to have this conversation. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind everybody that the views that are represented in the conversation today are the views of the speakers themselves and not endorsed by IABA or any one individual who does not specifically endorse them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. We are joined by Albajun, who is a founding partner of Benash Pitney and Riley Immigration, which is a nationally recognized immigration firm. She's a litigator with nearly 25 years of experience and focuses on removal defense, federal court litigation, and immigration consequences of criminal convictions and complex citizenship issues. She's been recognized as a leading attorney in complex government cases. She was the 2025-2026 chair of the AILA Washington, D.C. chapter and has held multiple national and local leadership roles within AILA and is deeply committed to pro bono work, including pioneering representation for transgender asylum seekers. She's a graduate of George Washington University Law School and Boston College and is fluent in Spanish. We are also joined by Ali Balour, who has been practicing immigration law since 1996 and is the managing partner of Balour Carl Immigration Group based in Los Angeles with offices throughout California and Idaho. He's a former elected director of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and former trustee of the American Immigration Council. Ali has also served as an adjunct associate professor of law at Southwestern Law School and is a frequent national and international speaker on immigration law. He's also fluent in Persian. Last but certainly not least, we are joined by Rebecca Wolf, who is Director of Immigration Justice Campaign and the American Immigration Council, where she leads efforts on immigration detention, border policy, and enforcement issues affecting rural communities. Prior to this role, she served as a staff attorney and Equal Justice Works Fellow, representing detained asylum seekers in New Mexico and developing legal access programs in detention centers. She holds a BA in history from New York University and a JD from the University of California College of Law, San Francisco. Her background also includes co-founding and directing an international NGO in the US and the Middle East, and she's fluent in Arabic. So we're so incredibly excited to be joined by our panelists, and I'd like to get started by asking each of them a very basic question of what it means to be an asylum seeker and what is the process for someone who has an asylum claim to come to the United States and seek asylum. And I'd like to open it up by asking Ali to take the first stab at answering that question. I'm sorry, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So just to clarify, as somebody who is going to seek asylum, they need to be on U.S. soil, so they can't be overseas seeking asylum. Just so people who are on U.S. soil can ask for asylum. Basically, they need to prove that they are either afraid of future persecution based on any one of the enumerated grounds, or they have past persecution based on those grounds, and those grounds are political opinion, obviously race, particular social group, religion, etc. For the LGBT population, typically what we see in our clients, they obviously have a political opinion because they want to be free. They want to be able to do what they want to do to be themselves, the true selves. Also, they qualify under, through case law, under a particular social group, because if they can prove that they are identifiable, et cetera, what the law requires, then they also, so you can have multiple grounds seeking asylum. And the process is, once you are on US soil, you can ask for that. And then you go through the process, which I'll let my co-panelists explain further. But, the Trump administration has put a monkey wrench in the whole process, because now for Iranians in particular, one of the banned countries, cases aren't being adjudicated, they're not being decided on, they may get interviewed, etc. So there's multiple issues that Iranians have as far as asking for asylum.
June, Becca, do either of you have anything to add in terms of the basic framework so our attendees can just understand the general principles behind seeking asylum?
Sure. So, in addition to what Ali said, there's sort of two ways you can pursue asylum in the United States. One is through USCIS, where you apply for all sorts of other benefits. And like Ali said, that's the universe where people from certain countries, their applications, all asylum applications are actually being paused for adjudication right now under the Trump administration. The other way, which is the way that is tied most closely to deportations, which is sort of how we got called into to do this webinar because of the renewed deportations to Iran. Those people are in removal proceedings. They're in front of immigration court, and they're claiming the same exact thing of what Ali said, but instead of with USCIS, they're claiming it before an immigration judge. And when people come through the border, some of them come and are released into the United States. Some of them are coming and detained from the moment they cross the border. That is incredibly arbitrary who that happens to and why, and it changes throughout time. So I think that our most recent experience has been with people who are in that removal proceeding, but that hasn't, that's not necessarily everyone that's ever been affected from this community.
June, anything to add?
Historically, asylum from Iran has been a pretty safe bet for many people. The persecution of political opinion, the persecution of LGBTQ people, of certain religious minorities, people who convert from Islam, certain nationalities within Iran is really very well documented. And so the violence and persecution against numerous protected grounds have generally meant that people who have can fall within those grounds and have some history kind of for most of as long as I've been practicing immigration law, which is not as long as Ali, is a was a pretty sure thing because the record is so well developed. We know so much about Iran. And now I think what you're seeing is a panic against Iranians and certain other nationalities, but really Iranians and Afghanis have taken the brunt of it. That is introducing a lot of previously non-existent barriers to asylum that are meant to cut down the number of grants. It's very obvious that the goal is not to change, is to have different results, and without really a true change in law, but rather changes in procedures.
Interesting that all three of you mentioned the current state of how the Trump administration is dealing with asylum seekers, and obviously, given the IABA is hosting this panel, we'd like to stay focused on the plight of Iranian asylum seekers. What dangers are you seeing, especially to Iranian asylum seekers, given the reaction from the administration to pausing all types of asylum processing at this time? And Ali or Becca, we can start with either of you.
Yeah, so they're not pausing adjudication of people who are in front of the immigration courts. So that's a really important distinction. Those people are being railroaded. Those folks are having their asylum applications adjudicated and denied. And so that's been a confusion, not just amongst all populations of what does it mean to suddenly have the Trump administration announce that, certain benefits, it's causing immense confusion and disruption. So I can speak to the folks that are in the immigration court process. What to what Ava was saying, there used to be very straightforward kinds of asylum cases, and then we all probably have practiced in a wide range of areas, but things like political opinion in countries where it's well established that we do not have diplomatic relations with the government because we see them as an authoritarian regime, or however you want to describe it. That's sort of the basics of asylum law. That's our asylum laws were created in the 1980s precisely in that sort of framework. And so it's really it's stark, the dramatic transformation of how these cases are being dealt with across the immigration court system. But I think in a case like Iranian asylum seekers, that's sort of most obvious because of a really dramatic shift in how they're being treated. And it's not just Iranians, but for the purposes of our conversation, one of the things that has happened under the Trump administration, it's a little bit of like death by 1,000 bureaucratic cuts. They haven't necessarily, said Iranians can't, apply for asylum or something like that, right? What they've said is they'll pause the adjudications of the ones before USCIS. In the courts, they've implemented a system where the government attorneys no longer have discretion to agree to anything. And so in a case like a very straightforward, for example, LGBTQ asylum seeker, like my clients, it would have been a situation even under the first Trump administration, to be honest, which is when I started representing a lot of LGBTQ detained folks. You could negotiate with the government attorney just like any other sort of adversarial process and talk to the government attorney and say, look, will you stipulate to any of this? It's obvious that it is illegal to do X, Y, and Z in Iran. it is punishable by death. Will you agree that, will you stipulate to these elements of asylum? All of that's gone. I don't know if Ava and Ali, you've had better experiences, but we have not had a willingness. We've had a government attorneys tell us they have not. They have been told they cannot stipulate to anything, and so all of these cases are going through before the immigration judge. And you have a scenario in which the government has told immigration judges to be inherently suspicious. Asylum seekers are liars until proven otherwise, right? That's the sort of noise around our asylum system, and that has impacted every asylum seeker from every nationality. But again, in a situation that an immigration judge before would have sort of looked at it and said, this is a very straightforward case, are now being challenged, and sort of it is again assumed that it's fraudulent until proven otherwise. And that's, I think, what we're seeing affect these cases the most, is that then all of the biases of the judges that are being involved, whether that's a bias against nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation, is all feeding into sort of what is happening in the adjudication process themselves.
I just want to add that it's interesting to hear Becca and Ava, June, mention that asylum from Iran was a slam dunk. To me, it was never a slam dunk. We always had to fight really hard at both USCIS level and also immigration court level. I've had to deal with government arguments, moronic arguments, really, that if somebody is 20-something and is a gay person from Iran and has survived, why can't they do it for another 20, 30 years? So that kind of a moronic argument did exist even before Trump. It's empowered because of Trump. I have, for example, I have a lesbian case out of Florida that is still pending prior to the directive to pause the asylum process, right? So now there's an official pause, but this case was interviewed prior to the pause, and she's still waiting. And it's a slam dunk case, and she's still waiting. Now, of course, she's not going to get a decision. Shinjin, you mentioned what's the danger specifically for Iranians. I mean, the danger. I'm not minimizing the danger from any other country, but at this moment, at this present time, where there's massacres going on, upwards of 40,000 by any count, the LGBT minority really is one of the most vulnerable populations, perhaps next to Baha'is in Iran. And they have no one. They have no one. So when the Trump administration, on the one hand, pauses adjudications, but on the other hand, amplifies the deportation process that Beck was talking about, and has at least 2 plane loads. And she just mentioned the third plane load is going to perhaps leave on February the 4th, February 20th. And even, 2 or 3 people that may be LGBT, I mean, they're essentially going to a death sentence. That's a real death sentence. That is not in question. That is going to happen at the airport or soon thereafter. So it's a terrible situation for all Iranians, but in particular for vulnerable communities, the minorities, including the queer community, and all the other minute minorities in Iran, because they have no one.
I want to follow up on what you're referencing, and this is a very difficult topic to talk about because we are, those of us who are Iranian and Iranian American, we're talking about a situation that we want to help and are simply unable to help because of roadblocks and administrative blockage that we can't. Could you please explain for our attendees the process by which currently individuals from Iran who are seeking asylum based on their identity status are facing deportation, because I think it would be helpful, given everything that everyone is seeing in the news, for everyone to understand how is it that someone who has a cognizable claim for asylum could even end up on an airplane to be deported back to Iran. It would be, I think, a helpful, understandable statement to understand, like, how do we even get there?
Uh, I can handle that, and it really depends upon sort of a number of factors. Becca discussed the people at the border. The people at the border have historically been subjected to, if you show up at the border and you ask for asylum, the rule has been up until maybe 10 years ago that you were entitled to a hearing in front of an asylum officer who would then determine if you had a credible fear of persecution and then put you in front of an immigration judge if you did it. Now, with the shut borders and the safe third countries, their entry removal orders, they're not giving people their credible fears. Those folks, the Iranians showing up at the border or crossing the border and being apprehended shortly thereafter, wind up pretty quickly on deportation flights, and don't always get the credible fear interview. Don't always, and they're barred from asylum. They can only get a ancillary form of relief called withholding of removal, which basically says we can still deport you, but we can't. We can't deport you to Iran, but we can deport you anywhere else that will take you. They tried to deport a client of mine to, they said either Romania or Australia. Thing is, nobody told Romania or Australia. So that's one way. Another way is that when there was the 12-day war back in June, Tom Homan, who is now running Minnesota and is Trump's border czar, and apparently he's more agreeable than the guy before him, Greg Bovino. But he said there are thousands of Iranian sleeper agents in America. And they're working for Iranian intelligence. And they went to people's homes and pulled them out and threw them in jail. I have at least one client that's still in jail from that sort of thing. I've been able to get most of them out. But that's what happened in the middle of June. They arrested, the word is somewhere over 3,000 Iranians. And these are people that had considered themselves lawfully here. They had pending applications for asylum. They had pending applications for green cards. And I had two clients who had pending application for green cards because the government found that the work they're doing serves the national interest. And they threw these people who are doing important major work and have no history of crime or anything like that in jail. And so, to initiate deportation proceedings. And so, yes, we're still looking for a green card based upon the employment-based case. But when you're in removal proceedings, you either get a green card or get deported. You can't win 50%. It's not like, Ali and I go to, have a lawsuit where I say he owes me $100,000 and we agree on 50. You either win everything or you lose everything in immigration court. There's no middle ground. There's no, I'll plead to a lesser offense. And so, of course, you're going to put in your application for asylum at that point, especially if by choosing to remain here, you have chosen not to do your military service. Or there's factors about you that maybe while you were here, you got involved with the Iranian Students Organization and got involved in protests against any one of the multiple crackdowns that have occurred in Iran in the last 10 years. The third way is that they apply for asylum, and the government has said that the asylum office can't grant it. Now, it's phrased as an adjudication pause, But really what it is an approval pause, because they can send people to immigration court. For us, we're like, fine, that's great. We'll do our case in immigration court. Because unlike Florida, we have highly reasonable judges here. They're working very hard to change that. But we've always been able to be successful in immigration court in Iranian claims. I want to add one more thing, is that this pause does not only affect asylum. It affects marriage-based green cards, work permits. So I am having, as we get close to the end of the year, multiple meetings with Iranian students who are supposed to get their work permit that allows them to work for the next year. And they can't get it because they're barred from having their application approved. And so what do you do in that circumstance where the government is forcing you into violating your visa status? And maybe asylum makes sense because you know that if it comes to it, you'll be able to get asylum in front of a judge. Whereas otherwise, you're just sitting out there with no status, no right to work, and a sitting duck,
Yeah.
basically.
I mean,
But I think that's Imogen, I think it's different with the queer community because if you are that person and if you are part of the majority and you're a straight person or whatever, you're part of the majority. And yes, your application's being paused. You're not getting your student work permit. You're not getting your EB-1, all of those things, and you may end up in court and you may lose in court. So that's a chance that you take in court, and then you may lose your chance, and then you're deported back to Iran. If you're part of the majority, you can still function somewhat, right? It's a terrible result. You can function. But with gay people having no protection, they are basically being flown into the gallows. So that's the distinction that I would make as far as the gay population of
Sure.
Iran, as opposed to everybody else that's also is negatively affected. I've seen things. I mean, we've all seen things that they're just incredible, and it kills my faith in human race and also renews my faith in the human race at the same time. What we've seen, witnessed, I'm referencing the massacre and all of that, of course, but also of the human need to survive. One of our clients in custody, gay person, we lost that case and is on appeal. So, after the order, the client was moved to, I'm trying to think, to El Paso. And from El Paso, he was going to be deported, not to Iran, but to El Salvador. And so my
Which
client
is
who
no
speaks,
picnic, which is
no, for
no
a gay
safe
person
place
to
for
go,
a gay
no.
person.
Exactly. You don't have options. A straight person would, a gay person would not in El Salvador. So my client, basically he threw himself on the tarmac. That's what he told me. He threw himself on the tarmac and he destroyed whatever papers he had because you have to drag me into that plane because I'm going to die. And it's nothing short of kind of a movie scene, really, Meryl Streep or somebody that I imagine, and I'm just 99% sure this happened. An ICE officer who was gay took pity on him and separated him from the crowd that was heading towards El Salvador, kept him in jail for enough time until we filed the appeal. And now he's still in jail, but at least he's not in El Salvador. So when it comes to gay people, we have even less protection than the rest of the crowd, especially if you're Iranian. I mean, it's just endless. But yeah.
And
I would also say that, so sort of on your point, Ali, like I have three clients that have sort of brought me into this universe in this moment. One of them began represent all LGBTQ. One of them I began representing before as they were still in immigration court proceedings. Their cases are tied. They have similar evidence. They're witnesses in each other. They're a group of friends. Um, I got a hearing in El Paso. They're all in El Paso. All the El Paso courts, all detained. It's a miserable place to be. In that client's case, we had a 45-minute hearing. The judge asked three questions about firm resettlement, all these sort of technicalities, said, obviously, this person, you've established that, you've met all these things, grant asylum. The other two didn't get lawyers until after their immigration proceedings, and both of them lost. And then they didn't appeal. And part of the reason that people didn't appeal, and like I think this is like maybe too technical, but it is part of this, it's the framework of what's so just like heartbreaking of what's happening, is that they didn't appeal because no one ever got deported to Iran for years until a few months ago. And so when they lost their cases, every single person that they talked to said, well, you can appeal, but you're going to stay in detention until that appeal is finished. Or you don't appeal, you let the order become final, and you'll wait 6 months. They won't deport you because they can't deport you because we don't deport people to Iran. We haven't in years. We would have to have a negotiation with them. We're nearly at war with them. And they lost their cases in May. They needed to wait 6 months. And we started deporting people to Iran in August. And they were screwed. And we are trying to get their cases open. But, Ali, to your point, one of my clients has been tried to put on a plane 3 times, every single removal flight up until now. They have tried the first one, absolutely. And I can't express, we've all been practicing a long time. And I started representing LGBTQ and transgender asylum seekers. That was my first, who were all detained in New Mexico, which is where I started practicing. I have never, ever had cases like this. You listen to you can listen to the audio recording of their hearings. So I know what happened, right? The judge is saying things exactly what Ali said. The judge saying, well, you only got caught once, right? Caught by besiege, caught in a same-sex relationship, right? Imprisoned because of it, but you're only caught once. And they don't kill everyone, is what the judge said. They don't kill everyone. And it's like, we know that, but I don't know that everybody knows that that's what the judge says. And our system, so, I think that the system is now also such that because they were unrepresented, their pathway was very narrow in terms of what they can do. And now we're sitting here screaming to anybody that will listen that that this is who you're going to deport to Iran. They have open criminal case. It's not as I'm just affirming what you already said, Alex. It's like so astonishing. It is not like being deported even to some place like El Salvador. And I don't say that lightly, but the Iranian government has their names. We have told the Iranian government, these are the people we are sending to you on this plane. This is when it's going to land. That's what people are being faced with. And so, that's a wide range of repercussions for those people. But for the LGBTQ folks, it's very, very clear cut, I think, what is going to happen.
We've been talking a lot about deportation flights, and I want to take a step back because I think, those of us who were part of kind of setting up this webinar obviously know that there are deportation flights going on, but I want to make sure that the broader audience kind of understands what's happening, because there's a lot of news and there's a lot of information that seems incompatible with each other. So I think it would be helpful, and maybe Abby, if you don't mind, kind of giving a little bit of information, and then Becca, I'm going to ask you specifically about your clients, about what is happening with the deportation flights, because we're seeing in the news that the administration is speaking to the Iranian government about some type of potential deal, but then we're also hearing about deportation flights, and then we're also hearing that the only people who are potentially being deported are individuals with criminal backgrounds. So there's a lot of misinformation and information that doesn't seem to really be matching up together. So with that, Alia, I'd like to turn it over to you. And then Becca, I'll turn it over to you about your clients specifically.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that what we hear in the news as far as deportation flights, everybody being criminal, that is just flatly not true. That is just misinformation. That is just not true. There's no evidence that that is the case. So as far as the deals being made with the, Islamic Republic, I mean, who knows? Who knows what the deal entails? Perhaps there are valuable assets that the Islamic government wants in their possession. Perhaps that's part of the deal. I mean, all of these are speculations that we can't really talk to, but narrowing it down to to the gay community. I'm not saying that our community is a saint and we don't have any criminals, but chances of that being, chances of a gay criminal being on that flight, being sent back to Iran is almost zero because they don't even have the opportunity to commit crimes and live in Iran. Because if they do commit crimes and they're found out, that's execution right there. So, so chances are low. Clearly, I think there are assets that the Iranian government wants, perhaps on those planes. But like Becca said, we haven't been deporting anybody to Iran just because of the lack of diplomatic relationships. And I always of the belief that we all need to take personal responsibility, including in the profession that we're in, including in the community that we're in. I think we got to be too lazy. I think attorneys perhaps provided the wrong advice that you're never going to get deported. Perhaps, when you go in court, you have perhaps multiple reliefs. One of them is withholding of removal, like Ava June said, right? So withholding of removal allows somebody to stay here and work, and you have to apply for that work permit every year, but you effectively have a deportation order, right? Which the Trump administration now is using, and basically using that deportation order to put people on those flights because they already have an order. So I go back to our community, our legal profession, our smaller gay community, that perhaps we're fine, especially gays. If you tell them that you can live here and work here, you just don't have final status, and you have a deport order for the rest of your life, that may be good at that point. Perhaps that person did not fight enough. Perhaps his advocate, her advocate, did not fight enough because that was not as bad as what they had before. But when regimes change, and our regime changed here in DC, then stuff like this happens. So I'm not surprised that the deportation, the withholding of removal, and the deportation orders are being effectively used today. I'm not surprised. It was just a matter of time, and it's just sad. It's just sad on so many levels that this is happening. But I think that legal community, we have to take responsibility for it as well, for not explaining perhaps what the result was. Some cases you can't help, but I know personally of, I don't want to say many because I don't have a count, but I've been, doing this for a very long time. So it would be many, where cases where I don't know why person got cat. Ava, I don't know why somebody who was clearly qualified to get asylum settled for cat, and he was, represented, and everything was there. It's just they didn't provide evidence. They didn't, and so the judge at the end relies on the country conditions. Where if Iran is this horrible place, which it is for dissidents and gay people and you didn't provide enough evidence for me to make you cross the threshold, that's how you don't qualify for asylum. I'll order you removed, but I withhold your removal, or I give you convention against torture because you just didn't provide evidence. But I believe Iran is really bad, so here's your order. But then Trump comes and then uses that order to put people on those planes.
I want to add to that
Mhm.
that I've seen people with orders, final orders of removal, no cat, no withholding, no asylum, where they sort of gambled on they'll never deport me. They can't deport me to Iran. And that was a safe bet. Okay? Republicans, Democrats, whoever's been in. Bill Clinton tried to make relations better. This is, Hillary Clinton wanted to do things better. Ronald Reagan hated them. The various Republican and Democrat have come and gone. Nobody has ever done this, what Trump is doing. And I had a person on that flight, okay? And he took an order believing he was safe. And he was so cocky about it. He was saying that no, he's not going to appeal. He's not going to do any of that. Let me tell you, the week that they moved him from Michigan to Arizona, where the flight left, his cockiness was eviscerated. And suddenly they're telling me about all the ways he's going to be persecuted. And ultimately, by like Thursday or Friday, they're considering a motion to reopen that I said, if you're going to do this, you have to do this back on Monday or Tuesday. Because if that flight goes on Sunday, I got to get a stay before 5 p.m. on Friday. Because the Board of Immigration Appeals and the immigration courts, unlike the federal courts, don't issue stays after 5 o'clock on Friday.
Were you on hold for an hour with the clerk on Friday afternoon on that? Because that's what I was doing.
I was not, because my client never decided to file a motion to reopen. And so he was convinced that the flight would never happen. I should let you know that he had a completely miserable 5 days of sleeping on concrete floors in frigid cells in Louisiana, in Arizona, of not being able to get into the facility because there was a measles outbreak in the facility, so they kept him at the airport where there were 40 men in a room. And he got to Iran and somehow got permission to go to Turkey. So, in the course of just the behavior of the two governments over a couple of days, I hate to say it, but Iran seemed better. Just over those couple of days. I'm not making any grand pronouncement here. And so they are not criminals. They are not recent arrivals. He was not queer. And I agree with you, Ali. He had more options arriving in Tehran by not being queer. Because, being able to go to Turkey as a queer person isn't necessarily great either.
No, but at least you don't die. The other thing I want to
Exactly.
add is, again, assuming responsibility for our community. I think, for decades, Iranians have accepted the dehumanization process of being, as a result of just being Iranian. We've accepted that it's okay to put up with certain things, that it's fine. And we, to this day, we haven't really accepted our gay community. We are still marginalized. Even in Los Angeles, we're marginalized. That's a community kind of a fault that we need to accept, that we've done it. Because of this, our people are getting shipped back and most likely executed. You can go back to the body bags that we see, 50,000, 40,000 body bags in the streets of Iran. Somehow, we don't have one single other minority group supporting us in any one of these demonstrations, in any one of these award ceremonies, in any one of these social media. In fact, I've been berated by other minorities for standing up for my people, for my gay people, for my straight people, for my Iranian people, because I'm called an Islamophobe, because I've been labeled this and that because of my advocacy. So that is the result of our community that has failed for decades. This is not something new. This is all coming to fruition because of Trump. Trump is just there. But like Ava said, Republicans and Democrats have come and gone without really fixing the situation. And we are seeing the fruits of that just ineptness today.
It's a very truly horrible situation that, to your point, has been bubbling over for years. Becca, I'd like to turn to you for a moment and talk to you about the clients that you mentioned who had been specifically impacted. And just by way of a little bit of background, there were a couple of articles that were published last week, and then a couple more that came out earlier this week about these deportation flights that have a couple of LGBTQ Iranian individuals on them, or who were supposed to have been on them, but then because of the measles outbreak, some seem to have missed the flight. So I'd like to turn it over to you now to ask about, the status of deportation flights, if you're aware of any, if you know of any additional flights that are coming up, and anything that you would like to share about the clients that you have that are currently going through this awful time.
Sure. Yeah. So the way that flights like this work to a place like Iran, where there's not regular diplomatic relations, as Ali said, is that the U.S. government has to negotiate very specific flights. They say, okay, and so they negotiate. Most of our understanding comes of how this works comes from organizations that have significant ties to Congress, essentially. I will say that the flight that left at the end of January, up until the last minute, the DHS was telling Congress that it wasn't going to go. And the lack of transparency, and I don't mean just like a friendly congressperson from Michigan, I mean like the Senate Foreign Relations Committee were being, like really, I don't know that, sort of as an example, where that is different in this administration of a sort of cowboyness of it all. They have to negotiate the exact flight, and they have to negotiate who's going to be on the flight. And so the representative of the Iranian government in DC, I forget the technical term of them, but they know who they have agreed to take on the flight. And then those people are moved to a staging facility. That's what Ava was talking about, our clients getting moved to Arizona. A combination of things happened with my two clients who are romantic partners, but have different legal postures. So one of them now has a stay of removal, a temporary stay of removal from the district court, and one doesn't. And so we were in a moment on the last flight of one of them having a stay of removal and one of them at risk of being put on the plane up until sort of the day of the flight. The measles breakout happened, and the people who were at the airport were deported, and the people who weren't at the airport weren't. Whether that was because of political pressure, because of legal pressure, because of the whims of measles, it's a combination of all those things. I say that though to say that there is still, maybe it's a tiny opportunity, maybe it's silly to say out loud, but if people were so moved to try to do something about this, there are political maneuvers, there are political levers, I mean, to try to access. The Iranian representative The Iranian government's representative in Washington, D.C. has to be complying with DHS. They have to be agreeing with it. And that is something that they did not historically do and then started doing. And as Ali said, there's probably all sorts of political reasons why. But also our congressional offices of things that have been, whatever it's called, a bipartisan. Sorry, I'm not on the political side. Bipartisan. The idea of deporting people to Iran is sort of a uniting idea for our politicians. And so we have just heard that one of our clients, and we're still trying to confirm, so this is one of those things where we hear it and then we try to chase down where it came from, that there's another flight being set for February 20th. This is what happened in the last few times. This is actually more notice than we got the last time. The last time we got about 5 days notice. So they don't tell us when they're trying to remove our client until, like I said, this would be a lot of notice of 2 weeks. That's been the pattern since the flight started in September. And so we run around to try to figure out if the flight is actually happening. And then we try our different legal maneuvers. We're still waiting for courts to issue stays. There's still open legal processes, open appeals in both of their cases. But right now, one of them has a stay from a circuit court, and one of them doesn't. And that person has been notified. At least what we understand is that person has been notified that he's being put on another flight. In the first 2 flights, he was not medically cleared. They couldn't move him because he's in a wheelchair. And they have decided that he's now medically cleared somehow. So I can't speak to everybody that's been on these flights. And I don't know necessarily that my clients are representative of everybody that's on the flights. But it is really, I keep using the word stark. This is what I don't have much faith. I have not had much faith in our immigration legal system for a long time. It's not like I thought we were the bastion of freedom and hope of the free world. But the fact that it's not working in this scenario feels sort of particularly dramatic because of the very obvious, clear consequence of what happens if they are deported. It is not speculative.
Yeah. I think I want to add, as far as, since we're running out of time almost, action item. I don't know how many people are watching this or will be watching this, not live, but the Iranian situation has been caught between a rock and a hard place because, obviously the Trump administration is doing these flights, doing these pauses, doing these, ordering these deportations and removal orders, et cetera. So all of that is Trump doing. Is Trump's doing, and obviously there's a massacre going on in Iran. So that's just the reality. And from someone from California, we have 2 senators. California has the largest Iranian population outside of Iran. Our 2 esteemed senators who I voted for have not said one single word about the plight of Iranians in diaspora, Iranians anywhere, because their main mission is to be anti-Trump. So as immigration attorneys, I think we have, just as a population, we are against what's going on with the Trump administration just because of what we do. But I'm also a human. Not everything is about US immigration. The part that pertains to Iranians is really life and death. And I am appalled by my representatives who have not even commented about the massacre, never mind the planes. So that's what I mean by dehumanization of Iranian lives that somehow has been okay. So I want to ask anybody and everybody here who's watching, contact your representatives. Doesn't matter if they're Republicans or Democrats. Our lives matter, and it needs to be publicized. It needs to be defended, not just in immigration courts, but in the court of public opinion. And that is something that is just sorely lacking just because Iranians are rising against their dictatorial Islamic regime that has killed them, persecuted them for 47 years. And just because Trump is the president and is a Republican, so my two Democrats from California, they don't make a statement. That to me is offensive, is as obnoxious, and is unacceptable. It should be to everybody, every American. It should be unacceptable. So please write to your contact your Congress people and demand action. Iranians aren't there to be slaughtered just because somebody decides to do that in the name of whatever religion. I don't care.
Very, very important point, especially in the context that we're speaking of. So thank you very much for that, Ali. We have about 5 minutes left, and I'd like to try to end this conversation on a little bit of a lighter note. I'd like to ask each of our panelists about a case or a favorite memory of a client who they have successfully been able to help through the process from the LGBTQ community, who is Iranian or perhaps not Iranian, bonus points if Iranian, because I think in these dark times, it's always a good thing, especially as attorneys, to remember why we do what we do, especially given the context that we are living in. So whenever you have that kind of glimmer that you're ready to share, please, we would all love to hear that. And I think it would be a wonderful way to end this conversation that has had a lot of information, a great call to action that I hope everyone takes with them after this call. And we should all do as much as we can to remember the humanity in all of the communities that we serve and the communities that we should be doing more to serve. So once you have your little glimmer, we'd love to hear it.
My favorite asylum case story, I'm sorry, does not involve an Iranian, but it's so good that
We'll forgive it, Abajun.
he's a gay man from El Salvador, and he went in for his hearing. And after the hearing, he said, "What was the name of my judge?" I said, "Your judge's name is Judge Soper." And he was having the hardest time pronouncing it. And eventually he said, "Well, I don't care what anybody else calls him, but to me, he's Judge Papi." All right? He loved him. He's like, he is so handsome. So it turns out that Judge Soper got himself fired by Donald Trump, as very good immigration judges do. And we called him up and asked him to join our firm, and he accepted. And we all call him Judge Poppy.
Love that. Becca, Ali, either of you have anything you would like to share?
I'll go. So before we started, you guys made a comment, the sign behind me, and that's really is one of my favorite stories. So years ago, I had this shy 19 or so year old Iranian student on F1 come to my office, and he was, I spotted him as gay. My gaydar worked, and I was right. And he was trying to maneuver through F1 status and what happens after that. And I asked them, why didn't you apply for asylum? He goes, based on what? I go, based on being gay. So I think that was the first time that he was having that conversation with an adult, definitely an Iranian adult, where he opened up to me, and he said basically his uncle was his source of finances, and his uncle was a physician, is a physician, and he, they sent him here for him to go to med school to become a physician, and he looked really unhappy. So I go, what do you want to do? Because I want to be a designer, graphic designer. I go, well, do that. Go, well, I don't have any money. I go, well, if you get status, you can work, you can go you don't need anybody. You can do everything yourself. And so he hired me. We filed for asylum. We won the asylum, whatever. He's a US citizen. But years later, I mean, not only did he went to a school to study graphic design, he graduated. Now he teaches graphic design at the same school in Los Angeles, and he designed our little logo back there. So that's like one of my favorite stories because I feel like I made a change, and he tells me that I made a change. So thank you for asking that.
Lovely.
I mean,
Becca?
my most recent the third party of this group of three friends, a trans man client who won asylum, got out into El Paso, New Mexico. I mean, Texas, sorry. Went to southern New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico. I am not shading New Mexico at all, but wow, rural New Mexico, it's a thing. And so we were trying to. He wanted to stay close while his friends were also still in proceedings. Um, and we finally convinced him to go to like an LGBTQ asylum seeker house and program in Massachusetts. And so we met with him and the program director a week ago. Um, and my client's a nurse, was a professor, like taught nursing as a professor. And the guy in Massachusetts is like, well, yeah, we've got these. I was like, you got to go to Massachusetts. Like, let's get out of the New Mexico. I love New Mexico, but like Massachusetts is going to have stuff for you. And they're like, yeah, we've got this program for international folks to transfer their licenses to become nurses. And his face just like lit up, and it was just like for the first time in a really long time, like there was something he could control, that he could contribute. Like he was so excited about the fact that he could like go and be a nurse and do great things. And then he was texting me on the train ride, because I don't know if you know how long the train ride is from El Paso to Massachusetts, but he had some commentary and I enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. We needed it.
I mean, those were such wonderful stories. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for the work that you do, not just for the LGBTQ community, but the work that you're doing as immigration attorneys. I'll speak for myself and say that, I'm truly grateful for everything that you're doing. And it's hard work, it's difficult work, but it's necessary work. And so thank you. And we're a few minutes over, but I want to take this opportunity to thank all three of you for taking time out of very hectic and busy days to spend some time to speak with us. This has been a truly insightful and wonderful conversation to have with you. Thank you for educating us and for sharing these truly heartwarming stories. I would also like to take the time to thank the District of Columbia LGBTQ plus Bar Association. They were our partner in sponsoring this panel, and they do a lot of great events in the DC area. So if anyone is in the DC area, please look them up. But IABA DC is a chapter of the national organization. So if any of our attendees or panelists are not a member of the IABA, please think about joining. Yaldajun has placed a link with all of our social media and all of our website information in the chat, so please look us up. And we do a lot of different webinars on a variety of topics, so please follow us so that you can continue to join our topics. But with that, I'd just like to say thank you again, and we hope that soon the immigration tide will change and that we will be able to have a panel where we talk only about the wonderful stories and only about the good stuff. So thank you again, and thank you to all of our attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you.